Welcome back to the Full Force Combat podcast. I'm delighted to be joined in this episode by undeniable Mr. Steve Rouke. How are we going?
Mate. Yeah, very well, mate. You?
Yeah, very good. So there's a lot to dive into. You've been around the block a few times.
Yeah.
We'll start right at the beginning, Steve.
Mm-hmm.
Northern Iron, growing up there. Tell us about your upbringing. Ballymoney, is that right?
Ballymoney, mate. Yeah, born in Ballymoney, and then moved to a little village called Rouke, and then back to Ballymoney before I moved over here. Really, so. Nothing massive really to explore about childhood. Had quite a decent upbringing. Mum and dad stayed together, etc., etc. Got a little sister. Dad was married before my mum. Had some half sisters, half brothers. So fairly stable upbringing. But I was just a bit of a dickhead, if I'm honest. Most of my childhood and most of my teenage years got into a lot of trouble, a lot of fighting, a lot of drugs, as a lot of people do, mate. And yeah, that's probably the highlight of it, really, mate. If you want, I guess one of the mad stories, I was 18 or 19 working in a call center and a job came up working in India. And I applied for it and got the job and I moved to India. Moved to a city called Noida for a while, and that was pretty mad. And I came back and I thought when I went to Noida in India, that was me for life. And I came back and it wasn't, unfortunately, and started getting into more trouble, more drugs, more fighting, and had to move away, mate. And I moved to England. It was the hardest, the saddest, but the best thing I've ever done in my whole entire life, mate. To be fair, it made me, really.
A lot of transition there. India, but that was a mad one.
It was, mate, especially, I mean, when I moved to India, mate, I was about 26 stone probably, mate. So you go over there, this big white ginger Irish lad, 18, 19, covered in tattoos, walking around, and you're walking the streets and everyone's like, who's this guy? And the bit I struggle with the most, mate, is obviously there's a lot of poverty and there's a lot of wealth, and you're walking along the streets and you've got kids pulling on you, mate. And because you're the big one and you stand out, and I dress like a scally, I still do, to be fair. And you just stood out, mate, and everyone was like pulling on you all the time. So it took a bit of adjusting as an angry Irishman moving out there, like. But no, it was an experience, mate, and something I'll always remember. And I'm still in contact with, I mean, I was 18, 19 when I went there. I'm 34 now. I'm still in contact with some of them that I went there with, and also some of the people I met out there. So that was pretty cool. It was probably the coolest thing I've done until I moved over here, really.
Would you say that experience helped shape you in a way? Not in the combat sports, maybe, but in life?
I don't know. So there's a lot shaped me, but I don't think it realized it shaped me until now, if that makes sense. So I've fast forwarded a lot of years there, but I went to a really good school in Northern Ireland called Dalriada Grammar School. And for those that don't know, education is still sort of segregated between your traditional high school and grammar school. At least it was when I was growing up. So Dalriada was one of the best, so not the best school in the country. But I didn't really appreciate it at the time. Mm-hmm. But now at 34, when you're in certain scenarios, that did shape me, but you didn't realize it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, similar with India, meeting different cultures. Again, one of the best experiences of my life, learning how to speak to people from different nationalities. I mean, when you grow up in Northern Ireland, it's Protestant or Catholic. Yeah. When I was growing up, there was respectfully no Asian people and no black people. I think we had 2 Chinese people in the school. It was very few and far between. So that made me appreciate different cultures. But again, I probably didn't appreciate them until I actually had my head switched on. Mm-hmm. And now it's like I go to a different country. I love it. And I think that probably set the foundations for that. Having been someone that, I mean, we only had 2 holidays as a kid growing up, and we went to Spain twice, and oh, poor me, but you don't see much of the world then, do you? So yes, it shaped me, but I don't think I realized it shaped me until probably, the last 5 or 6 years, really.
Absolutely. No, as you know, a lot of my family's from Korea, so it's a similar upbringing. And do you think was it a big surprise, the different cultures and stuff? Because as you said, respectfully, there was no black, no Chinese or whatever. So was it a bit of a big surprise to you, that?
Yeah, absolutely insane. When you go out, I mean, I always make the joke, my granny, God rest her soul, she grew up in a village and she probably never met another Catholic. She probably never met a Catholic. She grew up in a Protestant village, and the 9-mile radius, she probably never interacted with a Catholic lady, and then there was me growing up, and, we kind of mingled, I guess, different religions growing up in Northern Ireland, not loads, but it was much more accepted then. Yeah. And then all of a sudden I'm in India and it's like, there's Islamic backgrounds, whatever else. And you're like, oh my God, someone's, again, respectfully, you grow up and you see, I think the only time I'd ever seen a different culture really in the media at that time was when 9/11 happened. Do you know what I mean? And then all of a sudden you're in a country where you see some burqas and whatever else, your head falls off a little bit, to be fair. So yeah, it was an absolutely insane experience. But equally, when I went there, what was cool, so where I worked in the call centre before I went to India was in West Belfast. West Belfast is a notorious Republican area. So a lot of my colleagues were from a completely different background than me. But when I went to India, we weren't Catholic and Protestant. We were just from Northern Ireland or Ireland or North Ireland, whatever. So it was really nice to just spend some sustained period of time with people from different backgrounds as well. And you get to know them and understand that as, we're not all that different after all.
Absolutely. And like you said, you've made some friend for life.
Exactly.
That you're still in contact with. But more back when you was in Ireland growing up and you said you was getting into a bit of mischief and stuff. So was combat sports a releasing, or was that never on the radar then when you was up to no good? How soon after was it that you fell into combat sports?
Ages, mate. Ages.
Really?
But I remember watching in said call centre, there was the Olympic Games Reconnaissance fought. And that kind of really sparked my interest in boxing. Mike Conlon to this day is still my favorite boxer.
That Olympic Games.
Unbelievable.
Wow.
Unbelievable. And then that little bit of dogging, when you're a bit of a dickhead growing up and you hear him swearing on camera and slating the judges and the referees, for what it's worth, that really inspired me. And I started adoring boxing. Obviously we have Frampton and whatever else back home as well. But for me, the transition to combat sports didn't happen till way later in life, really. And it's not really something I took a massive interest in until, like I said, Conlon in the boxing, McGregor come out on the MMA scene, etc. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, there's people from a similar region to me doing bits, what? And then you just sparks your interest in these different combat sports, really. But God, when I was growing up, I thought everyone thinks they're a hard man when they grow up. But the hardest men I knew growing up never portrayed themselves as a hard man, whereas I was always the opposite of that. I was always the loudest person in the room, the big person in the room. I was just an arsehole, really. And I think back now, I'm like, if I fought me at 18 now, it would last about 3 seconds. Do you know what I mean? But you think you're this big tough man because you have tattoos and you almost use your size to intimidate people. You go out on a night out and you get...
But you're so naive at the same time.
A million percent. I'm like... The amount I gobbed off when I was younger, I'm surprised I didn't get filled in more than I did. And I had my fair share of beatings, to be fair.
Same here, Mucko, yeah.
But you just think there's a couple of really good boxers where I'm from, to be fair, and thankfully I never had a run-in with them, to be fair, because they would have absolutely peppered me. So I'm lucky I never got in a job broke too many times.
Absolutely. Now, you mentioned Mick Conlon. Now, I've experienced Mick Conlon fight nights in Belfast, and just fight nights in Belfast alone are just absolutely unreal. So, what do you think? Obviously, it had an impact on you personally, but what impact do you think it had on? Obviously, Frampton had an impact, but what about the Michael Conlon impact that it had on everybody? Did you see that firsthand as well as within yourself, other people?
Yeah, so I actually think it's a way. So we'll go on to the religious element in a second. Mm-hmm. But I think for a lot of people that grew up outside of combat sports, they don't really understand that there is this massive amateur boxing scene. They see it on the Olympics and then it's done with for 4 years. But I think through Conlon being so successful in the Olympics, and obviously then you had Katie Taylor and whatever else, people were like, oh, they must do that more than just in the Olympics. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean? And all of a sudden you've got this real interest in amateur boxing and appreciation for amateur boxing because you don't just get to the Olympics. Do you know what I mean? You have 15, 20 years of absolutely slogging your guts out to get to that stage. I don't think for those naive like myself really appreciate what happens in amateur boxing gym, really. So I think there probably was a bit of a laser focus onto, God, how did Belfast produce something like that? And then all of a sudden it's the amateur boxers. And then now, I mean, don't get me wrong, amateur boxing clubs are still severely underfunded. You've got a big push on, we need to save our amateur boxing clubs. We need to fund our amateur boxing clubs because this is what it can produce, really. So I think it had a bit of I wouldn't say political, but definitely a social movement element to it as well by seeing his face and slating the judges. And also I think on the professional side of things as well, albeit it was on the Amateur Olympics, I think it focused on the judging and whatever else. And there's definitely an element of corruption in boxing. Oh, yeah. So it gave a little bit of focus, I think, from the media on that side of it too. So I think it definitely had a massive impact across the board, both from sporting, social, looking at judges, professional, whatever else. So really interesting.
Remove the bias out of it. Do you think that was the greatest amateur boxing moment ever?
Yeah, obviously.
I know, remove the bias out of it. I think it genuinely is just everything about it. The emotion in it, the way he boxed was wonderful as well. Yeah. He boxed the kid's head off. He steamrolled all the way through the Olympics, boxed the kid's head off in the final. And I was horrified at the decision. I still remember it now. Yeah. And then just after it, I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it. Just the way he's screaming into the telly. It's just that image of Conlon there. I'm thinking, fucking wow. And
it's really, even if you watch it back now, I'd urge anyone who's not seen the moment to watch it back on TV, whether you agree with the decision or not, is to see the emotion on someone's face. I think a lot of us, even athletes ourselves, you go through this emotionalist sort of section of a training camp where you're just laser focused and you're not allowed to show emotion and whatever else. And then you see Conlon just laying it all out, you know, and I think there's something very poetic and beautiful in seeing someone actually portray their emotions, because he's pissed off. Of course he's pissed off. You're allowed to be annoyed, but I guess you get to a certain level in sports where you're not really allowed to show that anymore. And I guess in the amateur Olympics or the Olympics for amateur boxing, it wasn't really allowed per se, but he's just done it anyway. It's just nice to see someone show some emotion, I think.
Absolutely. A bit more on the religious and the political side. The impact of Carl Frampton. He sort of unified a wee nation for a little bit with the Protestant and Catholic, didn't he? But with Conlon, he carries the tricolours, but he's from the north. Where do you sit on this? Are you full on like, I'm Irishman, tricolours, none of that Great Britain nonsense, or are you like, I am Great Britain? Where do you sit on it?
I understand the question. It's quite difficult to answer, really. I would start by saying, look, I've been in England more of my adult life than I have in Northern Ireland, so I find it very difficult these days to have an opinion on the country as a whole. I don't know what the political landscape's like these days. My mum and dad still live there, all my family still live there, but I don't grow up in it. My kid doesn't grow up in it, so I don't know. For me, really interesting. So I was speaking to one of my good friends, Megan, this year, who's also from Northern Ireland, north of Ireland, who's a Catholic, but she lives in a predominantly Catholic area of Ballycastle, but she classes herself as Northern Irish.
Okay.
And I class myself as Northern Irish. But we don't have an identity, if that makes sense. You either have to be Irish or you have to be British. There was no option really of being Northern Irish, and to an extent there's still not, and I don't think people really understand that. So I was always too much of a Protestant to be an Irishman, and my beliefs probably weren't strong enough to classify myself as British. So I kind of sit in this sort of middle. I don't have an area or a hat to wear, so to speak. So it's difficult to answer. Really. I'm a Protestant. My mum and dad, you know, they were at Drumcree and whatever else during the Troubles. And, you know, and if I'd seen the stuff that they'd seen, I'd probably be more their way politically inclined. And on the flip side of that, someone that grows up in the Catholic area and seen the Troubles from that perspective, probably you can see why they're that way inclined. But I'm so far removed from that element that I would just like to be able to classify myself as Northern Irish. And I don't think we will ever be able to do so, because there's still this little claim for these 6 counties that you either have to be one or the other. So I'm going to sit on the fence with it, really. But I just, everything I do on TV, from a fight and whatever else, I always say I'm proud to be from Northern Ireland. That's not me saying I'm a staunch Protestant. You know, I'm not ashamed to say I'm Irish or whatever else. I just see myself as Irish. But that being said, no one really understands that over here. No. They just see as Irish Steve. Everyone calls me Irish Steve. Yeah. I'm not offended at that, where some people would be.
Yeah.
If you flip that then to the Michael Conlon thing, most of my friends growing up that were Protestants won't support Michael Conlon because he's a Catholic and he carries a tricolour, which I find very sad, because he's from a very similar region to us. Mm-hmm. And he comes out to a really beautiful song called Grace. Yeah. And that, if you listen to that song,
and if you know the history of that song,
you know, it's a man writing it who's arrested and he was being sentenced to be shot at dawn, and he's writing it to his wife, and she doesn't get married for the rest of her life.
Oh, poetic.
It is. And I've walked out to Grace before, which people find mad because I'm a Protestant. And I'm not arse. If something gets you in the feels and gets you in emotions, like, who's arse? It's got a deep-seated meaning more than your religion. You know, that's about love between a man and a woman, really. So I do find it very sad that people can't support Michael Conlon for his boxing talents, whereas I'm not arse. He is, and I will go hands down and say he is my favourite boxer of all time. Frampton is phenomenal, and obviously I'm biased because I'm from Northern Ireland, so I'm going to say they're my 2 favourite boxers. But Conlon, I absolutely love him. You know, I'll share. I don't share very many people's stuff on my Instagram when it's boxing related, other than Dennis McCann and Michael Conlon.
Yeah, absolutely. Being from Northern Ireland, it's like being a bit of a political, geographical glitch in it with everything that's happened. It's a shame, isn't it? But it is what it is. But more on the back into the combat sports side of things. Do you remember the first time you walked into a gym and why you walked into the gym?
Yes. Well, so when I moved over here, it was for university. So I went to uni, and in my first year of uni, I've always been really fat, to be fair. And I think during my first year of uni, at Freshers Week, there was a thing come in, you know, join a boxing gym, get them on free. So I've gone thinking I can fight, you know. I've gone to the boxing gym, and they put me with the worst boxer in the gym, and I was 10 levels below that. And I left it being like, I'm going to go back. And then I didn't go back. I always like, fuck that. I don't like not being good at something. Naturally, I was always, despite being a big guy growing up, I was always good at football, always good at rugby, whatever. As anything I played that was sporting, I was always good at. Boxing's completely the opposite to that. I was like, I do not know what I'm doing. So, there's, the next 4 or 5 years, nothing happened. I was just playing rugby, getting pissed all the time, whatever else. And then just before I got married, I was like, I need to get in a bit of shape. So there was a Thai gym next to us, but there's also a boxing coach in there. So a few of us signed up for a pre-season camp and started boxing. I went in and I just really liked it, really enjoyed it. I was like, I need to shift some timber. Eamon Mazzelli, who was my coach for, a number of years, just really took me under his wing and showed me the ropes, really. So, and that was just more to lose some weight. That was only in 2019, if I'm honest. So I started to shift some timber. Then COVID struck. My wife's a nurse, so she was like, absolutely no training. There's gyms opening around the place on the DL, weren't there really? But she was like, absolutely not. So I basically had to isolate myself for a couple of years again. So I only really got 5 or 6 months of boxing, and then out of COVID, and then just hit the ground running really and hammered it.
When you say hit the ground running, what was the first opportunity? How did you end up falling into competition?
Oh, mate, this is a bit of a not necessarily a mad story, but. So I can't remember the exact, I think it was early 2022. And I was just like, I started to get good because I was sparring really good people. I was getting battered black and blue all the time.
But that's what makes you better.
It does. And I always, singing your own trumpet when you say that. So I always had a set of balls. So I was always going in with people that are much better than me. A lot of people get a bit frightened of that and they like to be the dominant one in the gym. And then there's a little clique of us, sort of 6 of us that started boxing at a similar time. A lot of them had continued training during COVID, so they got really good, and I was still kind of the back of the pile. And then they started getting fights, and I was signing up for fights on the same show. I had 3 fights cancelled in a row, because for being a novice, when you send sparring footage over that, I was a bit too good for our novice type thing, so people just bottled it. And I got to the end of the 3rd fight, I had been pulled, and I was just like, what do we do? So I was in the gym at Eamon, and then the guy that owns the gym, Lee. And I was like, why don't we just start our own boxing promotions? And they're like, what? And I was like, well, if we're struggling to get matches for me, why don't we just remove that all? And then we just do match ourselves and start a boxing show. So, we started what was NHG boxing promotions and now is WCU boxing promotions. Had our first show in, I think it was December 2022. And guess what? My opponent didn't show up on the night.
Wow.
So yeah, and then I just kept hammering at me. And then John Collier from Wigan, who fought on BKB before, messaged me just saying that I want to fight in his show in, I think it was April 2023. So I remember very first boxing fight in April 23, and the rest, as I say, is history.
So that you started unlicensed?
Started unlicensed, yeah.
So how long was it after that you lost the gloves and stepped into a bit more of a brutal game?
Yeah,
shall we say?
So I had, I think probably 6 unlicensed fights in about 2 months.
That's not bad going.
No, and I was like, it's weird. I need to take my hat off here a little bit and say, so like at that stage, everyone was like, you're the next big thing to me. Everyone that I was surrounded by. But when I take a step back, everyone that was saying that to me were all involved in the unlicensed game. Actually, when you take it off, I was actually shit, really. In reality, I was okay. I was distinctly average, but I was actually not very good when you actually classify me as like an amateur boxer or whatever else. Other than that category, I wouldn't have been very good. So I do understand there's levels, but I just kept grafting, and then, I used to struggle sleeping, especially when I went sober. So like sometimes 3 and 4 in the morning, lay awake. We had a little one. So I was just on my phone, just looking at sort of mad things, in Russia, whatever else. And then I started messaging, I got onto this German promotion called TBL, who did what is now known as hybrid boxing before anybody else. So I just messaged them saying, can I come and fight in your show? I'll fight for free. Didn't reply. I harassed them for about 2 months. And then eventually I got a reply.
Got to be relentless with it.
Yeah, you got to make your own destiny, really. And then they replied saying, we're going to do our first bare knuckle show. Would you be interested? And I said, yeah, absolutely. But it turned out they didn't have anyone for me. And then we kept talking to them, and then I got offered my first bare knuckle in October 2023. So I was in the game probably less than a year before I actually got offered my first bare knuckle in Germany, and then off I went, flew to Germany and had a scrap, basically. Germany's
good for combat sports. I've been there 3 times this year, and it is very good. They do love it. So TBL, tell us a little bit more about this then, because you're now, I'm how do we word it?
Scout.
That'd be the word for it, wouldn't it?
Yeah. So I guess this is it all kind of comes full circle now. So this is what I was saying when I started to appreciate the skills I maybe picked up in India. So I went to Germany. The first show that I went to, I didn't actually fight myself, but I took a fighter over with me who fought. And I met the owners of TBL, a Ukrainian called Konstantin and a Russian dude called Johan. Mad mix, really, with everything that's going on in the world.
Crazy,
the most down-to-earth guys in the world, and I'm very proud to call two of my best mates to this day.
Yes, that's fucking class.
And we just hit it off, really, mate. And we just stayed in touch. And then they liked the reliability of UK fighters. And then myself and one of my best mates from back home, Rory, went over and fought in October. And we both lost. But they just we went 3 rounds of bare knuckle, and for all their bare knuckles, generally they're over in a round a lot of the time, really. So they like the durability aspect, and we just stayed in touch, really. And I'm fairly professional when I deal with people, I guess, if we're being straight about it. So they just like that, honesty, professional, no nonsense. And we've just stayed in touch ever since. They came over to visit, came over and watched me in Cardiff get knocked out cold. So yeah, just a really blossoming friendship. So now I just take fighters generally over every time they have a show for bare knuckle, 1, 2, 3 fighters, depending on what they need, really. And it's always bare knuckle. So they used to have a lot of nationalities interested in bare knuckle. Now it's only the Brits and either the Germans or the Ukrainians that are living in Germany that appreciate the bare knuckle, really. Happy
days. So India opportunity. Now you've got Friends for Life, TBL opportunity. Now you've got your sort of a job. Yeah. And friends for life as well. So Undeniable, on your management company, do you have fighters on there regular or semi-regular then?
So Undeniable Fight Management's a new thing. I mean, it's only been in existence for about 2 months. Okay. Formalized it. That kind of just blossomed out of, how did I say this without sounding like...
Did that start from TBL as well?
Pretty much, yeah. So it's nothing that I haven't been doing already, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Like you said, you formalized it.
Yeah, bit more formal to help maybe the guys get bigger opportunities. And that's not looking down on TBL, but TBL is a regional organization in Germany. The most professional organization I've ever witnessed, to be fair. The fights are very high level. It's really professionally organized, etc., but it is in one region in Germany. So the hope is with Undeniable Fight Management, if we take it a bit more seriously, there's more longevity in the sport for a lot of people and bigger opportunities, really. So that's kind of where it was born out of, is the TBL relationship. So now we've got 10 fighters. A couple of them want to go down the glove route. My preference is, I guess my skill set is bare knuckle, really. And really, mate, to be fair, it's not a financial thing. I know everybody says that, but I'm really not arsed about the money. It's most of the people I manage are my mates. And I've had to forge, and this isn't me saying, look at me, I've had to do it all myself, but I've had to forge my whole way in combat. Every opportunity I've got in combat, I've had to do it myself. So I just want to make it a little bit easier for them. I don't want them having to harass people, for 6 months to try and get opportunities. For me to get on BKB, I sparred all over the country for about 12 months trying to get my name out there to gym exaggerates so they could appreciate just how good I actually was. So it's just born out of that, really, to try and help them. And then we've got a couple that are now going on to Bad to the Bone. I had a couple of conversations earlier this morning and during the week with BKFC UK and then also BKFC in Italy and Montenegro. So hopefully get a couple of them on there as well. Fingers crossed anyway. So just trying to create some opportunities, mate, that I never had the fortune to get myself without a lot of hard work, really.
Absolutely. Like you said, you've lived it, so you know how difficult it is yourself.
Yeah.
And rather than them harassing and blowing up lots of different promotions, you're a man that can do it for them with taking a very minimal percentage, I should imagine.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like, bare knuckle pay is not great at any level, generally speaking, unless you're like the top 1 or 2%.
It's only just going mainstream, isn't it? So.
It is. And people think you must get paid loads for bare knuckle, but, a lot of people are still working off ticket commission on not even the smaller shows, the 2 big ones you get paid on, the 2 biggest ones you get paid on. The other ones you might get paid as an away fighter, but if you live locally and you can shift tickets, there's more money probably in the ticket commission side of things. So people have got to be a bit more appreciative that it is a business. And I say that as someone that is a fighter, but also a promoter. You kind of sit in this funny thing where you're like, well, if you're fighting bare knuckle, you should be getting paid. But, if you can sell 50 tickets and get, 30, 40, 50% ticket commission, you're probably earning more than what a pro boxer does in the first 10 fights by the time they cover their house fees and then they get whatever else, So yes, bare knuckle is brutal. Yes, you're going to fight a lot less in it. But if you want the opportunities, you've got to get out there and prove yourself before the money comes, basically.
Absolutely. Now, what does your bare knuckle record set at now?
2-2.
And you are hoping to be back out in
October 18th in Leeds, hopefully.
Yeah, touch wood. Now, what would you say that's brought you the biggest joy, aside from the management and helping other fighters, your fighting career itself, what's brought you the biggest joy so far?
So there's probably two parts of it, mate, really. So getting my BKB contract, to be fair, that was a bit of quite a surreal moment, really.
Let me start you there. Talk us through that moment then when you got that through. Like, talk us through your emotions.
I'm about to cry here a little bit.
Just talk through your emotions. No, open up, man. That's what this podcast is for.
Lad, I absolutely grafted my arse off, and people think everyone grafts their arse off. But, I went from 150 kilograms to my most recent BKB fight, fighting at 90 kilograms, 60 kilograms of weight loss from the journey. And I sparred everyone, everywhere. And that's not me. And from my last camp, from a pro boxing bout, I was sparring ex-ABA national champs. I was sparring 2 or 3 different pro boxers, and I was holding my own. So my actual journey in boxing, from where I started to where I am now, I would like to think anyone I've sparred say Steve's a high level boxer, but it's not been easy. There's a lot of sacrifice with that. I've went sober, which has been the best thing I've ever done, but that's not easy. You lose a lot of friends in the process, whatever else. So that's very isolating. So to eventually get to where I got to in BKB, with all the sparring, all the rounds, all the missing out at home, whatever else, I was in Malaga with my wife and my little one. And then Jim just sent me a message just saying, we'd love to have you on the February show, but let's make it a 4-fight deal. So he sent me a contract when I was in Malaga, and I was just sat with my wife, and I was just like, it's not life-changing money, but it's
a life-changing moment.
It's a life-changing moment. And I always say, this isn't going to make me cry, but I always want my little girl to think that anything's possible.
I say this, Steve. So, I've made my own mistakes and blah, 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 but I want my daughter to be able to turn around and say, that's my dad.
Yeah, exactly that. And that's, I don't think until you have kids or you have a close...
that you truly understand that.
No, exactly. I remember, I think everyone, when they have their parents growing up, you go, you'll know why I'm doing this whenever you have kids of your own, and then you fucking do, don't you? But like, if my little girl's probably going to see pictures of me online when she's older and be like, who's that fella? Do you know what I mean? Like, when I'm like this and, belly out there and whatever else, and I'm not doing very much in my life. But then she's going to see the shit she's got to watch. She watched me get knocked out on TV in Cardiff, which wasn't very nice. But then she also watched me fight in my pro boxing debut in Italy 3 months later and seen me win, So she's seen the good, the bad, the ugly. She's seen the sacrifice at home. And I hope when she gets older, she just understands like why I maybe missed a little bit of time at home with her to create every penny I've ever earned from fighting. I'm going off on a tangent. Every penny, and I mean every penny I've ever earned from fighting, has gone on a family holiday. It's the first thing we do. Got home from February, got knocked out, but 3 days later we went and booked a holiday. When I fought on TBL, got paid. What do? We went and booked a road trip around Europe. Every time I get paid, it just goes straight into a holiday, and that's the thing. So it's not life changing money, but it's like you said, it's a life changing experience, and then it creates. My little girl's seen one country until I was 18, which was Spain. My little girl's seen 12 countries, and she's 6 years old. And that's through fighting.
Wow.
So like I said, the BKB contract was by far the most surreal moment I've ever had in combat sports. But then prior to that, Aaron Ashton, absolute fucking hero. I really, really love Aaron. He's such a good lad. But I fought him on bad to the bone. I took a fight, I think it was in 7 or 10 days notice. So I was really out of shape, to be fair. No disrespect to Aaron, but you put both of us beside each other. I was quite fat, and Aaron was this absolute mount of a man in proper shape. And I ended up stopping him in the first rounds. I think at that stage, everyone was like, okay, Steve means business. And despite not looking the part, I was like, okay, I'm actually here, and I'm here to do a bit, really. So that was my proudest fighting moment, was probably Aaron in bare knuckle, and my most surreal moment was BKB. And if we talk about probably as an individual, the proudest moment was actually my fight in Italy in June. It took me a long time to recover after the February knockout, and I never thought I would get knocked out in my life. I've never been dropped to the head in sparring. I've been dropped with a couple of body shots.
But it's who you fought as well, though, mate. Yeah. You're not no mug. Do you know what I mean? Like, what is it, in the top 10, top 5 or something like that?
So Steve Evans, second ranked in the world at the minute.
He's ranked number 2 now.
Number 2.
That says it all, man.
Yeah, but I think the thing with the fight, I'm going around in circles here in a minute, but the thing with the fight with Steve Evans was, we read too much into the amateur boxing background. You know, he's a Welsh best holder.
Yeah.
You know, he's trained by Liam Williams, whatever else. So everyone's like, you're not going to be able to box him because you've not got that experience. But I actually think if I had boxed him, it would have went the distance. I've got 5'3s in me all day long. I don't think many people do it that way. So I think the longer the fight went on boxing wise, the more success I would have had. But we just didn't trust him. I went into brawling and just got caught. So coming back after that was tough. I took, God, I took 4 weeks off sparring, and then one of my best mates, Cooper from back home, passed away.
Sorry to hear that.
So he kind of, I don't fully understand what happened, but I think he got murdered in France. He got in a fight outside a bar and he fell and didn't wake up, basically. But I had to miss all the funeral and stuff because in the midst of the training camp, etc. But what sparked me getting back on the horse was I did 100 rounds of sparring in the morning to do some fundraising for him. So God rest his soul. But he gave me
that's incredible.
Give me that little spark back. And then I was like, you know what? I can still do this. And then the opportunity in Italy came. And mentally, mate, that was by far the toughest thing ever, because you're just full of doubt. It's just like, why am I doing this? I had no information on the opponent other than he had 10 pro fights. He was 4-2-4. That hadn't seen him, didn't know what he looked like, didn't know what he could do. But I just said to Mike, who's my little girl's godfather and my coach, and I just said, we're going to have to do it. We have to do it. And my God, my nerves were just shot the whole training camp. I was sparring. I had a good day. I was like, I'm classified a bad day. I was like, I'm never boxing again, you know. So to actually go out there and get the win, it was a little bit easy in the end. You know, I stopped him in the middle of the second round, but I prepared so fucking hard for that. I trained like a demon. But that personally was such an obstacle to overcome, and it just taught me a lot about myself. You know, you're not always just down and out. You know, you can come back from it.
Absolutely. Oh, it must have been tough to just wanting to get back into the gym after that. Not like you said, 4 weeks just to get back into the gym, let alone and go and make your pro boxing debut. And when you're going into the unknown anyway, then you're going into a different country, then you don't know who you find. It's like a bit like the amateurs when you turn up on the day and get a picture of someone, isn't it? But what's the main factor that you think that got you over the line? Was that family, your pal's memory, or was it a combination of the lot?
I think, you know, a lot of my friends from home probably question, I wouldn't say even say my friends, a lot of my old friends from home probably question my loyalty to Cooper or whatever else, because I didn't end up going to his funeral and I wasn't able to go to his memory, but I couldn't put myself in the circumstance where there was temptation of drink and drugs and whatever else. So I just had to abstain and I had to focus on my camp. But when I talked to my wife about it and we talked through it quite a lot and we're quite open, she just said, just because you're not there doesn't mean you love him less than your friends. It just means, you know, you remember his life in a different way. So, that definitely sparked it. And then I was just like, it's just something just clicks in your head and you're like, you know what? I need to fucking get out of this. And I messaged Aaron Ashton, who I'd fought on Bad to the Bone and stopped. And he just got beat by Mark Godbeer, I think, on one of the bare knuckle protests down south, but it was a war. He's always in a war. And I just said, mate, I've got so much admiration for you, because every time you get beat, you just come back and you take on another challenge and another challenge and another challenge. And I can't remember exactly what he said, but I read the message and I read it a million times. And I was just like, you know, this is a former opponent that I had stopped saying this to me. So I was just like, just fucking put your big boy pants on and just get back to work, really.
Yeah, if he can have that attitude, I can have that attitude, sort of thing.
Exactly that. And then Mike was a new addition to the coaching team. I was training in Preston at Larch's amateur club. And we just kind of took the focus. We're like, we just need to get back to your boxing. You know, fuck everything we've done before. Just get back to your boxing, get back to your skills and just test yourself. And I did loads and loads of work to just make myself a better boxer. They had an amateur in there. He's now turned over pro at a different gym. I can't really say his name because I don't know if he's allowed to be sparring with me or not, but he beat me up a couple of sessions first when I was getting back into it. And Mike stitched me up. He's like, he's just going to come and do some tech drills with you. And then he got there. I was like, jumping in the ring with him. Yeah. and I hadn't sparred since God knows when. And
welcome back, Steve. Yeah, welcome back.
And then Jay Barton in Southport, I think he's a 7-1 pro. Very good boxer, very established Thai boxing career. Before that, I did quite a lot of rounds with Jake as well. And he's a bit smaller than I am, but his technical ability is superb. And when people are watching that and they're coming up to me like, when did you get so good at boxing? I've always been this fucking good at boxing. I just never backed myself, or always, I like a scrap. You know, I like to sit in the pocket and have a scrap, but it's not my go-to really.
So there's just lots of things that sort of happened along the way, really, with sort of triggering and getting back into it and just having faith in yourself, really.
Absolutely. But you've done it. You got it out of the way. You got a win on the road.
Yeah.
Was it extra sweet when you got the stoppage as well?
It was, mate. And do you know what? Like, I just, when I get in there, it's mad. So you go from fighting bare knuckle to boxing. And I don't think people will understand this because they think of bare knuckle. I've had 100 straighteners on the street.
It's a different kettle of fish.
I know. And trying to explain that to someone is you've got someone who's done a 12-week camp, has either been training just as hard or if not harder than you, and they're going in to fight you with like gloves. And people will watch bare knuckle and go, the boxing's not as good as actual boxing with gloves on. And even if you get pro boxers to turn over, they don't look as good. Maybe with the exception of Jack Cullen, who looked fucking class, by the way.
Yeah.
But it's how tense you are, you know, and you can be as relaxed as you want to be, but it's just not quite the same. So you can't let your hands go as much, you know, and you'll see people, their chins are always a little bit more in the air with the bare knuckle because they're throwing, but they're kind of backing off at the same time, you know. But then, when I got the gloves on in Italy and I put them on, I was just calm, you know. Where we fought, I was a beautiful part of Italy called Rouke, just outside Genoa. And I mean, it's on the coast. I was sat, you know, I was reading Sun Tzu's Art of War, just sat on my feet dangling off the pier, you know, an hour before I went out to fight. And then I said a little prayer and just zoned in. And I don't think there would have been many men able to beat me that night.
It sounds like it couldn't have gone any better that day.
It couldn't. Do you know what was amazing? And
you deserve it, man.
Yeah, it was beautiful. And Mike and his wife Amy, they had a little girl, and Amy and the little girl came with us to watch. And do you know what? For the 2 days leading up to it, we were just walking around this little town, and little baby Ali was only probably 3 months old. But every time I got a bit nervous, I'd just pick her up out of my pram and I'd just go for a walk. And I'd come back, and then all of a sudden it was zen, because she was so peaceful, I was so peaceful, and yeah, it couldn't have gone any better. It was nice to have the gloves on. Gone off again on a bit of a tangent, but I wasn't able to throw my right hand the whole way during camp. My hands were fucked from the bare knuckle, so I was basically just using one hand. And when I was going in for a really competitive spar, I'd let it go a little bit. But I got there, I was like, I'm just going to have to put it all out there. And I caught a right hand, and I was like, it doesn't fancy it. And then just that was all she wrote, really.
Lovely. Now, the punching, it's a lot different in gloves than it is bare knuckle, because you're not going to jab with the bottom two of your knuckles. It's always going to be the top two. So how different was it, and how much of a reminder was it how brutal the bare knuckle scene is when you lace the gloves back up?
Oh, man, it's like, people think this is mad, but you know when you put a pair of boxing gloves on, sometimes I don't think you even realise that you're not clenching your fists. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Because it almost does it for you. Yeah. So unless you're almost really up for it and you're really biting down on your gum shield and you're really throwing, your hands aren't even clenched, I don't think, in them. Whereas like in the bare knuckles, I remember my first ever one on TVL. I hadn't even sparred in anything other than 16-ounce gloves. I'd barely worn any MMA gloves. And I got in the cage to fight, and I was like, what the fuck do I do with my fingers? Like, what's this? You know, and then I was like, oh my God. So then I was defending like this for a while, and I was like, that's not working. It's going to have to go like this a little bit.
Getting your bearings with your own hands.
Like, oh my God, I've got so much room for activity type thing. So it is just completely different. You know, you can throw your shots different. You throw less because you're so worried about your hands, you know, and if you catch the wrong part of someone's hand, you know, you do see a lot of medical retirements because of hands, because they catch there as opposed to the soft parts of the face. So it's a completely different sport. And I think the sooner the man watching at home or the woman watching at home realizes it's a different sport, it's not boxing, the better. And it'll be better for the sport that way as well, because it isn't boxing as much as it looks a little bit like boxing. You know, punches are different, punch volume's different, movement's different, defense is different. So it's its own sport in its own right.
I think that's why MMA fighters are generally more successful than boxers. Obviously, like mentioned, Little Lever's meat cleaver. Now, he was fairly active anyway, but the likes of, look at the BKFC card in Birmingham recently. Frankie Gavin, 7 years after retirement. Jamie Cox, 7 years after retirement. Judo Jimmy Wallard, MMA fighter, 2.5 years after retirement and a big injury. That's a long time out of the ring, isn't it? Exactly. And your head can tell you, I can still do this. The trade, you might still look good in the pads and it in the bag. Then when you get in there, it's just absolutely goes all out the fucking window, doesn't it, man?
It does, man. And it takes a different mindset. Like Jack Dugdale, for example, I've got a lot of time for Seamus.
I like Jack, and Seamus Devlins. I like all that group. Yeah,
and shout out Seamus. To be fair, Seamus, after my fight on BKB, I went down to Burnley for 3 or 4 weeks before I started training with Mike, my coach, just to go into somewhere completely different. But you look at Jack and Frankie's fight, people think Frankie wasn't there to win in the first place. But he wasn't. He got caught off shot. I mean this in the most respectful way. Bare knuckle isn't for everyone. Mm-hmm. You know, as soon as you take that first shot, you're like, this might not actually be for me.
Absolutely.
You know, so it's not like he's completely quit. It's not that he's not good enough. It's just that bare knuckle's not for him. And Jack, I think, showed that. You know, when you look at them on paper, I think I've seen Seamus's comments online. A lot of people were saying that he was a ridiculous coach for even taking the fight in the first place. But look where it's got him. You know,
exactly.
So it's a completely different sport. But Jack Cullen, on the other hand, mate, like I think he's going to be untouchable, mate, if he gets the right fights. I say that in Pick Jardine is one of my favorite fighters as well, to be fair. So if they end up fighting, I'll be a bit torn because I've always been like Jack Cullen is class.
Yeah, the thing with Pick is he'd hurt his hands and then he went and boxed on regional shows. So hopefully that fight can get made.
That's a fight to because like shout out to Pick. It is. I've been up to Pick's gym to spar Paul Venice during my boxing camp, and I've known Pick for a long time. And you know, people can say what they want online about him dodging Cullen or whatever else, but he definitely wasn't. And when you look at his resume on his 2 bare knuckle fights, he's gone against number 1 and number 2 in the world in his first 2 bare knuckle fights. Who the fuck else does that? You know, it's all well good fighting a former boxer or whatever else who's unranked and never been in BKFC. But if you fight someone who's tried and tested in that scenario and come out on top, you know, you're doing all right, aren't you, really? I just hope he gets the fight and gets the money he deserves.
That's fair enough. With Frankie and Jack, I think Jack underestimates himself and doesn't really know how good he is.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he has just got himself a multi-fight deal with BKB. So big up Jack Dugdale. Long may it continue. Now, we've spoke about your bare knuckle career and when you hope to be next out. Your other promotion.
Yeah.
WBU. It's bit of everything that goes on. Talk about that, man. Was that when you said about being matched and that's how you'd set that up? Was that how that stemmed?
Yeah. So WCU is an unlicensed boxing promotion, basically. It started as NXG boxing promotions, basically to try and get me a fight. Then we left the gym, me and Eamon and Jeg, the 3 of us that run the shows together. So we just rebranded pretty much. And we've always just had great success on the shows. I'm not blowing my own trumpet. I struggle to say we're the best show or we're one of the best show. But what we do have, we have a no journeyman policy. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to go out on my sword and people are probably going to slate me for saying this, but I don't think you should be matching white collar if you rely on journeyman. I think if you can't match someone based on their skill set, they just shouldn't be fighting, basically.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, if you've got someone that you can't find the match for because they're just not good enough, they shouldn't be fighting. Or if you can't, I get there's the money and someone pulls out on the day, whatever else. So there is, I guess, if I'm being straight about it, there is a little place for journeyman, but there's a lot of shows out there that have 10 home fighters, 10 home wins, and they all win by a body shot in the second round. You know, they're a dime a dozen. But we do pride ourselves on having no journeyman policy. Have we used a journeyman? When we were at NXG, we used 2, same person for both fights. But since we launched WC, it's just not been our thing. And, you know, sounds crazy, but one of our last shows, we had, not the one just gone, the one before, we had like 46 fights. But it's because these gyms send us all the fighters because they can trust the matching. Yeah. You know, we don't pay anyone. We pay ticket commission. We pay very good ticket commission. And people think, oh yeah, boxers should be getting paid. But I wouldn't expect to get paid for white collar, you know. So
licensed white collar ticket commission is good. A ticket deal is good enough.
Yeah, exactly that. I always think, you know, this is me definitely going out and open up for criticism, but you get this thing with semi-pro boxing. And semi-pro boxing, in my opinion, is not a thing because by saying so, you're implying that you're better than an amateur boxer, even though you might earn money from tickets and whatever else. You know, don't get me wrong, on the unlicensed scene at the minute, there are some very good boxers, ex-amateurs. You know, you look at like your Kyle Powers, your Jack Fays, whatever else. Very,
can't commit to the pros.
Yeah, exactly that. Or even to stick on the amateurs. The amateurs, you know, training 5 days a week when you're working and you got your wife and kid at home. It's a tough slog. So shout out to anyone who's boxing senior amateurs. You know, that's a full on adult. Like that's an intense and with no monetary gain unless you're going to turn over pro. So yeah, white collar on a licensed boxing, it isn't for everyone. Semi-pro boxing, in my opinion, isn't a thing. But yeah, we have some great success because gyms trust the matchmaking, basically. So I don't know, we've probably done about 15, 20 shows now, and we've got Leapfrog Fight TV. So Alex, the owner of that, him and I are really good friends now. We're doing a couple of other little bits and pieces. So since
integrating with them is kind of taken off a little bit in terms of social media, etc., and sort of fight quality. I'm fortunate to have made the connection in Germany. So we bring German fighters over for unlicensed boxing. We bring French fighters over for unlicensed boxing. We bring a lot of Irish over. So we have that little niche where the fighters that fight on our show aren't fighting the same people all the time, because we're bringing people from here, there, and everywhere to fight, which for me is really cool to be able to give opportunities to someone in our gym to box a French kid or a German kid that we never got a chance to. And then obviously the hybrid boxing is starting to take off. So we've had a handful of hybrid fights on the card as well.
Absolutely. When's the next unlicensed show?
So October 18th will be our next unlicensed show, which is coincidentally probably the same night I'll be fighting on BKB. So I'll be leaving the show for everyone else to handle whilst I'm fighting, hopefully, but we shall see.
I'm sure it's in good hands, though.
Yeah, it should be. Eamon was my coach, still does a little bit of coaching with me as well. And Jeg also sort of runs things in the background as well. I tend to be the one that everyone comes to, but it's because I'm probably more active on social media. Really, people associate my face with it, but there is 3 of us that do it. So
you're the face, and they're the body.
Yeah, I don't know how I ended up being the face. To be fair, I don't know. People just kind of go to me, but it's just when you're an active fighter, I guess your face is out there a little bit more, so they associate you with it. But yeah, October 18th, mostly boxing. There might be a couple of hybrid on it, but probably just boxing, I would say.
Oh, but it's good that Leapfrog are onto it. They've been a massively growing platform over the last 18 months to 2 years. They do their own Thai fights. They've got their own title fights and stuff now. They have WBC world title fights on there. So it's opening up more opportunities for you guys as well. So long may that continue. Now, the hybrid that you just mentioned, HBO, now that's been universally recognized now.
Yeah.
It's on BoxRec.
Yeah.
That's gonna go through the fucking roof over the next few years. So how did that come about? Did you just think that we've obviously got this niche and we've got the K1 and all the little bits and pieces that come on to the unlicensed shows sometimes, but we want just solely for hybrid boxing. We need to create a platform for these guys that want to box, but they want to box in 4-ounce gloves as well, because it's something a bit different.
It is. It's brutal, to be fair. So This is a long story, and I'll try and condense it as much as possible. But so myself and Ferrari Fakiri, who owns a gym in Preston as well, good friends. I train a bit of Ferrari's gym as well, so shout out Ferrari. So the hybrid boxing has always interested us, and we've always had the discussion. But to explain to the person that doesn't really know about combat, hybrid boxing has gone on BoxRec prior to what we've been doing with the HBO, but it's gone on as bare knuckle modified rules or kickboxing, with no real safety precautions, nothing really put in place to protect the fighters, nothing to stop them fighting, a day later if they get knocked out, etc., etc. So I'm always really nervous about hybrid fights on our show. I can't watch them, which sounds mad because I watch bare knuckle and I fight bare knuckle, but I can't watch the damage that it does to people because knowingly I've put them in a ring together. I really struggle with it. So I said, well, how do I make my conscience a little bit clearer? And so for Aaron, I was just saying, well, how about we try and standardize the rule set, get safety precautions in place, et cetera, et cetera. So for about 3 months, him and I created this 25-page document, basically how it's going to be governed, what the standardized rule set is, what happens if someone gets knocked out, how long they have to sit out for, basically like
proper regulations.
Yeah, proper regulations like the boxing industry have. And then we reached out to BoxRec. So our previous hybrid fights have gone on BoxRec as modified bare knuckle rules, like they always do. But I'm always of the opinion that if you're a true professional, you should be fighting a professional sport. A lot of these people that are going on BoxRec at the minute are boxing in 110s and whatever else in 4-ounce gloves, and it's just a con really, because BoxRec is just record keeping, but without proper sanction and proper following rules, they are basically just putting something on BoxRec. So we reached out to BoxRec, explained what we were trying to do, and the owner of BoxRec actually came back to us and said, I'm quite interested in exploring this with you. How do we make it work? So we replied via email. We chased up for about another 2 months, didn't get a reply. And then all of a sudden I got a text 3 days before our WCU show saying, I'm coming to your show to watch the hybrid.
Oh, lovely.
And I was like, and then 2 days later, our main event pulled out.
Okay, now.
So
up, then straight back down again.
So shout out Ben Pickles, who took that fight on 24 hours notice to make sure that we could do what we were doing, basically. So lo and behold, BoxRec came. She sort of supervised. She was there basically just to watch, and her words to me were, I don't know what hybrid boxing is about. I've never watched it. I want to come and watch it. So she came and she sat through a white collar show. Some of it, I think she was impressed with. Some of it, she was a bit like, oh, don't know about this. And then the 4 rounds came out, and I think she kind of liked it a little bit. So, so she was happy with what she had seen. We followed the true guidance, the guidelines that we have as HBO in terms of the wrapping. The wrapping was standardized. I had to give the hand wrapper the specific instruction. They came out the back. There was an inspection for the wraps. There was an inspection on the gloves. You know, everyone's medicals were in place, etc. We had passport checks, driver's license checks to make sure they were who they said they were. And then they had the fight, and then we had to submit proper results. You know, official timekeeper. We had an officially trained referee called Matt Higson. So he was trained by HBO specifically on a rule set as well. So he was the first qualified HBO referee. And then the next morning, basically, it had gone on BoxRec as hybrid pro, first ever hybrid pro fight that ever in existence. Now, I dare say they're not going to reserve that for us, and there will be other people able to submit it in the future. But I think what Ferrari and I both said to her is we don't want to be a monopoly. We just want to create a space where if someone else is doing this, they've got to do it to the same standard as us.
Yeah.
You know, it's all well good putting someone in 16-ounce gloves on white collar shows and doing a basic heart rate test and chucking them in there into the bit of the unknown. But when the 4-ounce gloves come out and people can get seriously hurt, if you don't have cut men there, you don't have medical team there, if you don't have an ambulance like the back, you know, bad stuff can happen, and it's opening promoters up to being sued because you're not taking proper precautions, and most importantly, it's leaving the fighters in a really disastrous sort of circumstance where they could be hurt and they're not being able to get rushed off and relying on ringing 999 and fuck knows when they'll come. So yeah, a little bit of a mad concept. So HBO in itself, the hope is that we will not put on shows, but we will sanction other shows. So we just got an agreement with a show in Northern Ireland called Fighters Fight Promotion. They're going to have 2 or 3 hybrid fights in November. So we're going to sanction those fights. We'll send over an independent inspector to make sure it goes so that we can submit them to BoxRec and say they're governed by ourselves. Between my management company and Leapfrog, we're going to launch Undeniable Fight Night on the 27th of September in Preston, which will be 4 or 5, hopefully, professional hybrid fights. And then maybe 4 or 5 amateur hybrid fights. And there's not really been an amateur hybrid fight, I don't think, that people know. But we're going to try 8-ounce curved MMA gloves so that maybe someone that's had, let's say, 10 white collar fights, but they want to try it, you know, going in 4s is a bit, but they might have fought in 10-ounce boxing gloves. So stick them in an 8-ounce MMA gloves just to get them used to where the fingers are. People are still going to get hurt, don't get me wrong, but it's a bit safer than chuck them in 4s. So we'll have a few of those and maybe a kickboxing undercard. So the idea is not to have any white collar boxing, that it's professional and amateur hybrid with maybe kickboxing thrown in for good measure. So, and then from that, gone off on a bit of a tangent, but spoken to TBL, we're going to sanction 2 or 3 hybrid fights on their September show as well. That's on the 13th of September. Shout out Ash Gibson, actually, who's going to fight bare knuckle on that, who's been around the block a few times over here, but we're going to sanction some of the hybrid bouts on that as well. And then the show that I fought on in Italy, they're really interested in having 3 or 4 professional hybrid fights sanctioned by us in February next year in Genoa as well. So from what we'd launched at WCU with the hybrid boxing organisation sanctioning it, we're going to have at least 4 sanctioned shows between now and February.
In various countries.
In various countries, which will hopefully set a benchmark. So like going back to the point with BoxRec, we don't want to be the only people doing it, but my point to BoxRec was, well, if we're going to go through this to get the bar to this, then surely they've got to take a stand and say, oh, anything that's below this bar can't be going on BoxRec. Whether that happens or not, I don't know. We've got to catch up with her on Monday to sort of discuss next steps. So I could be speaking out of turn here, but the hope is that at least there'll be some safety precautions in place for the hybrids, like you have with, I guess, with your Bad to the Bone, BKB and BKFC, where they set the standard for the bare knuckle.
Absolutely. It's all the rules and regulations need to be structured in place. Like you said, what was it, 25-page? So BoxRec are going to put that to the other promotion, and that's what they have to follow to a T. And I agree with that wholeheartedly. This is why Josh at Bare Knuckle News UK, shout out to Josh, won't cover any other promotion other than the properly regulated ones, BKFC, BKB, and Bad to the Bone. Because if something goes wrong and there's no medics or whatever there, then you look like a knobhead. The promoter's getting sued, and it just opens a can of worms. But like you said, you're going to be in various countries overseeing fights. Where do you see HBO going then within 12 months' time? Because when it's something new like this, especially with the bare knuckle that's taken off, when it's something new like this, it can snowball overnight, can't it? And are you prepared for that in any way?
Yeah.
Have you got a plan in place?
We've got a plan in place, and if you would say, I'm going to give too much away here, but fuck it, we are where we are. So when we got the document created, when we knew BoxRec were interested, we've reached out to Triller TV. So the hope is that within 12 months, we'll either be on Triller or DAZN in some way, shape or form. Whether that's something where we've got to be very careful, because we don't want to be a governing body, but also delivering a show, because it gets intertwined, then you could be taking shortcuts, and we don't want to be those people. So the idea would be that we have HBO, we work with promoters, we give them the skill set and the tools to launch their promotion, and then we help them get onto the likes of this show, where we've got BKB, BKSC and Bad Sabone in the UK for bare knuckle. It would be great if we had 2, 3, 4, 5 platforms that took it really seriously. Not that we want anything financially out of it, but we just want to get to a standard where we can deliver that, and then WCU benefits on the back of that as well, because then we can have sanction fights on our show.
Yeah.
So the hope is that we get some decent national, if not global, exposure on some real fight channels, and see where it goes to, really. But that won't be as HBO. That'll be either as Undeniable Fight Night, delivered by Leapfrog or whatever. We'll see. But I mean, equally, Leapfrog are growing, so could Leapfrog be on mainstream TV quite possibly as well? But whatever it looks like, I'd just like it to be safe for fighters, and I think that's where it's good. I'll never trust a promoter that's never really fought before, truthfully. So when you're a fighter, a promoter, a manager, whatever, you wear all these different hats, and I think at the foremost of everything that you do, you've got to have your fighter safety in place. And if we can get 4 or 5 promotions doing that, I don't give a fuck what anyone else does, really. If they want to deliver a subpar service, that's on them. But I guess the hope would be that the better fighters are then attracted to the minimum level of safety, and then hopefully just creates a sport that's safe for everyone, like the pioneers of bare knuckle have done. Absolutely.
Now, you are matching for HBO, aren't you, currently?
Yeah.
So what's the process for anybody that wants to give it a whirl?
Okay, so ideally message the HBO page directly, so Hybrid Boxing Organisation on Instagram. If you don't have that, you can message WCU Boxing Promotions or Rouke Boxing, myself, or Undeniable Management. I've got about 500 Instagram pages. But basically, message anyone. But what I would say is, don't message expecting to fight professionally straight away. I've seen some comments in some of the posts online that we've put, someone saying, I could fight such and such hybrid or whatever else, but they're not fights I would make in 4-ounce gloves, and I don't think those people should be fighting in 4-ounce gloves. I also don't think if you've only had a handful of fights, you should be even trying hybrids. Get 10 fights under your belt and then give it a whirl if it's something you really want to do. Different if you're crossing over from MMA and you've been used to that sort of impact from early doors or Thai or whatever else. But, if you've only had 2 or 3 fights in 16 or 14 ounce gloves or whatever it looks like, come down the glove sizes a little bit, see if you actually like it, and then work towards it. So messages by all means. Ideally, the 4 ounce will be for people that are at a level that we would be proud to say are athletes, professional athletes. If you don't look like a professional athlete, you don't train like a professional athlete, and your skill set isn't a professional athlete level, then you can't be fighting professionally, can you? There's such a desire to get on BoxRec these days that people cut corners and say, I'm a professional. Everyone's a fucking professional fighter. But that's where the bad reputation comes in for bare knuckle or hybrid or whatever else. You see all these fucking Instagram bios saying I'm a professional bare knuckle boxer, but they've just gone on BoxRec because someone submitted a result. They're not actually a professional fighter, are they, really? Let's be straight about it. So message the page, get involved, work with us, and I guess you should see hybrid boxing skyrocket, I think. And that's not as a result of HBO. I just think in general, if you look at like BKB, for example, I think they've launched, it's in Mexico, can't remember what it's called, but they've launched the Curve Club fighting in, I think it's Tri-Combat or Trigon Combat, which is, the skill set on those fellas is phenomenal. Loads of the Mexican boxers, man, in small MMA gloves. But, so that's kind of they're trying to break them into the bare knuckle ranks by letting them fight in the MMA gloves as well. So if you've got a desire to fight bare knuckle, it's a no-brainer to start off in hybrid, because you'll know whether you actually like getting punched or not.
Absolutely. But like you said, it's not for everybody to think that delusionalize themselves, that would be the word for it, to think they can go and fight in 4-ounce gloves, because as we know, and any MMA fighter will tell you the same, them 4-ounce gloves ain't to protect your opponent and his face, it's to protect your knuckles and your hands. So you've got to prepare for that. So I think it's good that you've got the amateur aspect as well. So it's not just like, come to us, we're a hybrid boxing league. You fancy it? Yeah, 4-ounce gloves. Yeah, come on, let's have a scrap. You've done it all properly, and it's regulated and it's proper. And I wish you all the best with it, Steve.
Thank you very much, mate.
2025 has been a bit of an up and down year for you.
Absolutely.
But we're hoping to finish on a high, aren't we? October, hopefully.
Yeah, October 18th, we speak in the gym about it. Hopefully we get matched. Truthfully, mate, I've not got long left in me in terms of the bare knuckle. Like I said, I'm an accountant outside of this, so as much as I like to think this is really serious for me, my career is much more important.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But there's something in all of us that wants to let it out and have a fight. So this gives me that breakaway. But the plan for me is to win in October, whoever the fuck it is. If that's the last bare knuckle, then so be it. But if it goes well and I put in a good performance, whether win or lose, the plan is just to put in a good performance and we'll see what happens after that. But if you want to know my real plans, in 12 months time, I want to try and have a Valley Tudo, if I'm honest. So I need to get away and learn some grappling, and then that'll be my last ever fight if I can get to a stage of learning some ground game and headbutts. but yeah, hopefully we'll finish 2025 on a high.
Absolutely. Now I will be sure to be coming to the next couple of shows without a shadow of a doubt.
Absolutely.
You've definitely piqued my interest even more. Steve, it's been absolutely brilliant to chat today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Top man.
Yeah, thank you, mate.